Hi guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, I took out a poll on my Instagram asking if you guys would like to see a tutorial of this little piece here on YouTube, and a lot of you voted yes, so here we are. Now, this is going to be a real-time tutorial of the entire painting process, and it only took about less than 20 minutes to complete this painting. It's very simple, it's very short, and the main focus is to learn a little bit about the watercolor techniques, how to apply them, and just enjoy the painting process altogether. If you're joining me for the first time, don't forget to subscribe, because that one little subscribe or the one little comment that you leave down is going to help me stay motivated to bring out more tutorials and content out on YouTube consistently. Alright, so I'm not going to take any more of your precious moments. Let's dive right into the tutorial. Alright, let's get started. So I've taped down my paper on all four sides using my masking tape, leaving a little bit of space just to make sure my paper is nice and flat on this board. Now I have this palette, which is a curated palette of all the colors that I generally tend to use, but I've mentioned all the shades that I'm using, so you can use similar shades if you don't have the exact color. The process of painting is really about enjoying it rather than really focusing more on the final outcome, right? So we're going to work around the shades that we have to create a beautiful, simple painting. Now this is the thumbnail of what we are going to paint today. So I just wanted to create a simple version of it to try it out for myself and see if I really like the colors and the way it looks. So this is what we're going to be painting. Obviously we can tweak a few little things as we go if we want to, or we can end up creating something very similar. So I'm not really going to focus on the final result. I just have that with me just to know what I'm going to paint. Alright, so the first thing that I am going to do is create a basic sketch. Now, as you can see in this image, in this thumbnail painting, we have maybe 4 sets of mountains, the furthermost being lighter, and as we go down it gets darker, correct? And they're all wet on dry method. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch these in a very random order. I'm not focusing more on the way in which the mountain moves, and I'm just going to draw that out. So I'm going to go ahead and somewhere around half of the paper I'm going to start sketching the mountains out. So I have one coming like this, just really make it nice and uneven. Don't make straight lines, that makes a major difference. So try making uneven lines as you go. The next one, now if this one's going up, we'll try to make this one coming down so that there's a variation in these mountains. So I have the second one like this. Alright, this is my second one. This is going to be my third one. See how uneven I'm making them just to add variation in their placements. This is going to be my third one. Let's make my fourth one. Alright, this is my fourth one, and this will be the last one, which is my fifth one, on which the tree lies. So I've just made a series of these mountains, very nice and simple, correct? So we're going to go ahead and start painting. Right over here I have the tree. I'm not going to sketch it because I'll do it after the base layer has dried. Make sure, one more thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you are not making very harsh lines. In case you feel like your sketch is too dark, just go ahead and roughly erase it. And the benefit of doing that is because watercolors, once you get it on, you won't be able to erase these lines, and they're not opaque, they're transparent, so we don't want to be seeing all your sketch in the background, okay? So this is going to be a simple version of our sketch. Let us start painting. Alright, so the first thing that I am going to do is using a bigger size brush. This is a size 12 brush. You can use any bigger size brush that you have. Using that brush, you're going to go ahead and just roughly layer this entire section with water. So I'm just going to load this brush with a good amount of water and evenly spread it out. Can you see? Make sure that your layer is even and not just bulgy in different places or blotchy in different places. You want to make sure that you're getting good amount of water in all the sides. Okay, and just be careful around the mountains, because we don't want to go in that section. Even if you go, it's fine, you can always work around it, but try not to do that. So as you can see, I've evenly spread my water on this section, and now we're going to start painting. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and actually get a swatch card so that you know all the shades that we are using. Alright, so here I have the swatch card. Let's go ahead and start painting. Now I'm going to go ahead with a size 8 brush. Alright, and the first color that I will be applying is an orange color. So I'm going to be using this orange deep shade from my palette. Let me just get a nice mix of it. Alright, so this is the shade that I'm using. You can use any orange color that you have in your palette, and you're going to start applying that at the base here. Okay, and we're using the wet on wet technique to start painting this one. So you're going to start off maybe with a lighter consistency of the paint. What I mean by that, as you can see, the intensity of the color is not so much, right? The next shade that I'm using is cadmium yellow. I'll just show it to you. This is the swatch. You can use a yellow color from your palette, like this, and apply it right where the orange is. Correct? Nicely blended into one another. Alright. Now the next thing that I'm going to paint with is a pink color. So I'm going to be using this carmine shade. It's a nice pink color that I really like. I'll get you a swatch of it. This is the shade that I'm using. It's a nice pink color. So you're going to go ahead and apply that right above the yellow that you laid, and just blend it with one another like this. Alright, like this. You're going to blend it in, and the color at the top is going to be a purple shade. So I'm going to be using this brilliant purple color. I guess that's what it's called. Just give me a minute. Yep, it's called Brilliant Violet. So I'm going to go ahead with this purple color. You can see this is the shade that I'm using. Very nice, warm, beautiful shades, and you're going to apply it at the top like this. So now that we have all the colors in place, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and start playing with it. What I mean is, you're going to go ahead, clean your brush, and you're going to go ahead and just move all these colors around so that they're blending with one another. So let's just go ahead and do that, okay? So we all know what the colors are, correct? So you're going to go ahead and load up more of it. And what I mean by that is intense shades, less water, more pigment, so that the intensity of the color when you apply it is more, and since the paper is still wet, it will do the job of blending it into one another. The next shade that we know we have is yellow. Again, I am using a good amount of water. I'm not going to just completely not use water from my paint. On my paint, I am using it, but I'm using a lot more pigment so that the colors are a lot more darker and deeper. Now the next shade that we used was carmine. So let's switch to carmine color. Nice intense carmine shade. Apply it and just move it around like this. And you can blend it with the purple as well. Correct? Like this. So you've got a nice blend in the sky. One thing that I am going to do is sort of start mixing these colors into one another. What I mean by that is, I'm going to take a little bit of the carmine shade and start making these strokes into the orange like this. You know, just put horizontal strokes like this so that the colors really just blend into one another and it looks a little bit streaky, like you have the darker colors in different places. You can also take some purple and apply the purple in the pink area so that it just mixes with one another and looks like different cloud effects. I wouldn't say clouds, but just different variations in the sky like this. See how nice it looks? All the colors are blending into one another. If you feel like the top portion is not dark enough, then you can go ahead and load up a little more purple and apply that at the top portion of the sky, just to increase the intensity of the color at the top. And just slowly start bringing it downwards like this. So just playing around with the colors, that is really important, that you just move it around, see what works for you, play around with it, because watercolors is a very therapeutic medium if you're not going into perfectionism, right? So the colors will just flow and all you have to do is guide it, like guide it to move into one another. So it's a really fun medium like that. Alright, I'm really happy with this, so I'm going to let this dry and then we'll add the next layer over it. Alright, so now that this layer has completely dried, it's time for us to move on to the mountains. As you can see, it is very different from our thumbnail painting, and this is what happens when you sit down to paint. Every time that you paint something, your results can be different because you're really playing around with different colors and exploring, maybe changing up a few things. So it's not like your final outcome is supposed to look like that exact painting. All right, so a lot of times when you sit down to paint, you will notice that you are having different outcomes, and that's okay. You have to enjoy the process of painting, enjoy the process of creating, because that's the only way in which you learn. If you enjoy it, you will gain knowledge from it and then apply it in your own way, rather than running after creating something that looks the exact copy of where you're learning it from. All right, moving back to our painting, we're going to go ahead and start making the mountains. Now, very honestly, over here when I was painting, I had a bit of orange, so I had to cover it up with deeper, darker color. So for now, I'm going to switch to my purple color, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the carmine shade. So I'm actually going to just mix the purple and carmine together to get a color that is similar to this. So this is going to be the first set of mountains that I do instead of this one. So I'm going to go ahead with this and load it up on my brush and just apply it carefully. Now over here, we are not applying our wet on wet technique. We're just going with our paint and just applying it at the top. So without making the surface wet, we're just going to go ahead and apply this layer all over. Let's see where the layer is so that I'm not sort of messing it into the next set of mountains. So leave that gap and apply this. Now once you have this done, you can always move it around, increase the intensity maybe at the top corner, the top edge of the mountain. You can also clean your brush, dry it out a little bit, and just lift up a little bit from the bottom so that it creates that misty effect. So there are a lot of things that you can do with watercolors. We are going to go ahead with the most simplest form of it, just to let these colors that are blending into one another soothe our mind and help us relax. So that's why I've picked up very simple projects where you don't have to, really stress out about your final outcome. Alright, so I really like the way this looks right now. I've just increased the pigment that I add at the edge so that that section sort of stands out more than the remaining bit. And I really like the way this looks. So you're going to let this dry completely. You can use a hairdryer to speed up the process, and then we'll add the next set of mountains. Alright, so this layer has completely dried. That means it's time for us to paint the next one. Now what I'm going to do here, we used a mix of carmine and our violet color together, correct? This time I'm going to add more violet into the mix, into the same mix. You're not really changing anything, you're just using the same mix, maybe adding a little more violet so that that color intensifies. So violet becomes the more overpowering shade here. So I'll just show you the color that I've used. As you can see, it's deeper than this, correct? Because it has a little bit of carmine in it, so the undertone of the painting changes. Alright, so I'm going to start off by applying it in the second section. One second. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and apply it here. carefully you can go over the edge. You can also go beyond the sketch that you made, that's completely okay. Just make sure that you are going over that section a couple of more times so that it's not showing the previous dried up layer. Correct? So as you can see, I've gone beyond the sketch that I made, but I just blended and added more pigment in that section. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process as I did earlier. Alright, so you're going to add the second layer of mountains, which are darker as compared to the one that you had in the previous one. So as we come down, we're trying to increase the intensity of the color, make it darker, and the last one is really going to be a darker version of the color. Alright, so I've added this in. I like how uneven this looks. You're going to let it be uneven because it looks good like that. And you're going to let this section completely dry. Alright, now that this has dried, it's time for us to move on to the next one. Again, in this I will be adding more violets, and we can start adding a little bit of Payne's Gray in it. Just a tiny hint of Payne's Gray or indigo, or you can add in a little bit of black, but just a tiny bit, okay? So this is the color that we used. Alright, so now that we have the mix, as you can see, it's a dark violet shade. It's getting darker now, so I'm going to apply this here in the next one. Okay, like this. You can go beyond the sketch, that's completely okay. And just add it in like this. Alright, so now that we are done with this, we are going to just move it around so that we intensify the top bit a little bit more. Okay, I like how this looks. So you're going to let this layer dry as well, and then we'll move on to the next. Alright, now that this layer has completely dried, we're going to go ahead and paint this one. Now in this section, again in the same mix, I'm going to be adding more Payne's Gray to make it a darker version of the color. Let me just swatch this out for you. I'll swatch it out here. As you can see, it's a deeper color. Maybe I could add in a little bit of violet because I think it's too gray. Alright, I think this one's good. So maybe it's a color that looks like this. It's darker than this. So this one will be the final one. Alright. So we're going to go ahead, load up our brush with the color, and just repeat the process. So we have a lot of repetitive steps here, and that's, I feel like having repetitive steps in your painting is very therapeutic, because after the first or the second one, you really know what you are doing. So you're just going to go ahead and just do exactly that. And it's almost like your brain does not require a lot of thinking power. You're not thinking what you're supposed to do or stressing over the next step. You're really, you know what you're supposed to do, and you just go ahead and do that. So I really like repetitive things in my paintings. That's just something that I enjoy a lot. Alright, so now that this is dry, put on the section, I'm going to go ahead and let this completely dry before we go ahead and paint the last one. Alright, now that this has dried, all the layers have dried, we're going to go ahead to the final one with a lot of Payne's Gray, a really dark color. I tend to not use black directly in my paint. So whenever there's a deeper, darker color, you tend to mix it with Payne's Gray, or that color mixed with a little bit of black, but just not black directly. So I'm applying this right here, like this, and coloring it in. Sort of just completing the entire structure. So here's all the series of mountains that we have. Correct? Now on this, I'm going to go ahead and just start with the pine tree. So right here, somewhere around here, I want to make the main structure of the tree. So I'm just trying to make the trunk first. Maybe I'd wanted this tall. Okay, I think this is a good size. And I'm going to switch to a size 4, which is a slightly smaller size of the brush. And I'm going to go ahead and start making the shape of the tree. So at this top, at this very top, you can mix a little bit of burnt sienna or sepia so that those appear slightly lighter, because we have light in that area. Correct? So all the strokes that I make will be with that color. So you're going to start making these tiny sections left and right. Now pine trees can be sort of tricky sometimes, but don't worry. You're just going to go ahead and make a simpler version of it. Make a version of it that you are comfortable with. Make a version of it that you know how to make, or you've learned in the past, or learned from this class, from the previous lessons. Really just go ahead and make a version that you know. Now you can switch to your Payne's gray color and just start making these brush strokes. So from the entire process of this painting, this is the only one that might take a little bit of time because you are making these repetitive steps. But again, these can be therapeutic, as I said earlier. It means you are just repeating the whole process again and again and getting to your final result. As you can see, along with the branches that I add on the left and right side, I'm also making a few smaller strokes in the middle, so that makes my tree appear a lot more fuller and nice. One second. All right. Keep going at it, keep making the structure appear fuller. Might take a few extra minutes, but just enjoy this process of making repetitive strokes. You almost reached the end of the tree now. Now you can go ahead and really see where you want to add in extra brush strokes, maybe something that you want to make it appear sharper or some extra details. Go ahead and do that on your tree. Wherever you feel it's necessary, some extra stuff would look good, please go ahead and add it. So really just don't think so much about getting the perfect structure and all that, just enjoy it. All right, I really like the way this looks right now. We could add in a few birds in the sky because it'll be really nice. You can use the same brush or a brush that comes to a really fine tip that will make the birds appear smaller and you will have really nice thin strokes. So you're going to go ahead and just add in a couple of birds like this. Very fine thin strokes, one here, and maybe one here. All right, I really like this. Really like how the final outcome is. You're going to let this dry and then sort of have a final look to see if there's something that you'd like to change. Otherwise, we're going to peel the tape off. Alright, so I really like the way this looks. It was really simple to paint, right? It was just some basic stuff that we know already, and we've applied a combination of those into our paintings. Just something easy and fun to start off. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and peel the tape off. Remember, while you're peeling the tape, peel it slightly away from the paper so that you're not tearing the paper. Sometimes you end up tearing the paper and that hurts more than anything in the world. So just be slightly careful in that area, and that's all you need to keep in mind. And when you peel the tape off, you get these nice borders, which I think looks great and makes your painting pop up even more. So even when you feel like, oh, I don't like this painting, when you peel the tape off, your painting just looks so much more beautiful. So let's just have the final look at our painting. Here what it is. Let's focus on this a little bit. All right, so here you go. This is your painting. Simple series of mountains, some sky and a pine tree. A very simple composition, but I'm pretty sure it was so much fun to paint. I didn't take up a lot of our time as well. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed painting along with me. If you did, don't forget to leave some love in the comments section. Subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, and let me know if you'd like to see more of these tutorials in the future. And that is it from me in this video. I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.